Are you trying to one-up me? Are you trying to scold me for being a bad girl? 2016, I wrote a blog post. It was called The Coming Sex Coup. It was specifically calling out the behaviors of both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in their election activities as being indicative of what was going to be expected for women in political leadership in the coming presidential era. That activities that had been engaged by both the campaigns of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton did not portend very positive images and very positive models of women in leadership. Now, mind you, I was somebody that actually declared in 2015, in October 2015, that I intended to run for Congress in San Francisco. I had even talked to somebody who was a colleague of mine, a friend of mine at the time, and was in the course of actually developing campaign materials and discussing about how I would go ahead and start my own campaign. And this was during a time frame where there was a pending mayoral election. So I was waiting until after the mayoral election in order to formally start and initiate my campaign. But something happened. What ended up happening is that I kept getting hacked as part of the Republican debates. Every time there was a Republican debate on television, I did not have notice because I was doing something else. But at the time of the Republican debate, I was having a conversation with somebody who was interested in my political perspective and my political platform. And I would talk to them only the next day to realize that there had been a debate the night before. And some of the topics that had come up in my conversation with other people ended up being topics that were part of the Republican debate. Now, I didn't watch any of the Republican debates, and I only watched one of the Democratic debates. 2 days before the Democratic debate in Las Vegas, something horrible happened in California. Nobody's talked about it. I contend people were biologically hacked in connection with a satellite television broadcast of a specific show, and they were hacked specifically in preparation for the Las Vegas debate, the Las Vegas Democratic debate. If you watch the Democratic debate in Las Vegas in 2015, you will notice that it was incredibly disturbing. Not just what the candidates were saying, and not just how they reacted to things that were going on concurrently, if you could hear on that level. But how did the commentators after the debate, including the specific people that were part of the formal debate, respond? They made it into a sports competition. They portrayed it as if they were talking about athletes, and they were assessing these athletes for their athletic performance, as opposed to actually engaging in some sort of evaluation of them and their policy positions. And I contend that was entirely connected to the biological hacking that had happened 2 days before. There was a specific sequence of television shows that were on broadcast television, but with the manner in which these boxes that they started implementing in 2008 on, that were doing something with the signals and the way they intersected with the cable, the actual cable television stations that were broadcasting broadcast stations. There was a specific television show, and during the course of that television show, I was absolutely horrified. Something happened to me biophysiologically. I could feel it during the course of the show. I was watching the show with another person, and it was so disturbing to me, I had to step outside. And while I was outside, I was like, whoa, did that just happen? Did that just happen? And I didn't understand what it was and what it meant until the debate, until the Democratic debate in Las Vegas. Nobody's ever said anything about this. And nobody's ever said anything about the fact that concurrent to every Republican debate of the autumn of 2015, I was in a situation where I was discussing my political campaign with somebody else, only to find out the next day there had been a Republican debate the night before. Then there was the incident of the Republican debate, after which Ted Cruz made a public pronouncement against Donald Trump. And my contention was that what Ted Cruz was actually doing was actually something very, very significant and criminal that nobody has ever revealed. Either, my understanding of it was, either Ted Cruz had been hacked by the campaign of Donald Trump, or Ted Cruz hacked somebody else in order to try to gain leverage over Donald Trump. And he knew it. Regardless of what actually happened, he knew what happened. And I contend so did Donald Trump. The question is, did the other Republican candidates know? And did they know what was happening during every Republican debate of the season, up to and including during 2016 and the summer of 2016, including the Republican convention of 2016? This is a serious question. This is a very serious question, because that has had a very significant effect in the autumn of 2016, after the Republican convention and after the Democratic convention. I wrote a blog post called "The Coming Sex Coup." It wasn't about sex acts. It was about sex as in male and female, representations of women in political office, but also representations of women in leadership in general society, and that actions that had been engaged by the Trump campaign, as well as actions that were engaged by the Clinton campaign, portended a future time frame, a near coming future time frame, when women were going to be put into hypersexualized roles with specific kinds of expectations put on them. And that the way that Hillary Clinton was performing was not providing women with any sense of self-esteem about how to respond to it. But the way the campaign of Donald Trump was acting was doing even worse. And I said something specifically in there. I said, what if your wife was trying to bid on a contract for with the government for an endeavor in her local community? What if your daughter had been offered an internship or had been offered a job in an executive agency? Would you want the kinds of behaviors that these men, and by the way, that Hillary Clinton was engaging when it came to the way that women were supposed to be identified as being responded to or responsive of sexualized cues to be put on your daughter or your wife? Would you be proud to have your daughter work for Donald Trump? Would you be proud to have your wife work with Hillary Clinton? I contended at the time we needed to be very mindful about what was coming, and that the concern was that what was going to happen is that if we didn't deal with it, we were going to go through a period where there was going to be a process of women internalizing the self-hatred that was being projected at them. That we were going to go through a time where women were going to respond to what was being projected onto them in one of a number of ways. And that one of the possibilities that could happen is that women would take clandestine action to undermine certain kinds of things, including going after men that refused to check their sexism. But then you were going to be put in the situation with the converse. What if you're a woman that wants to be legitimized and wants to be able to be engaged in political process, but you do not agree to ceding to the sexualization of your leadership capabilities in order to meet the standards put on you by men or women? Mind you, it's not just men that are trying to compel women to these kind of sexualizations. It's also women, but it's also men and women trying to put them on men. Now we've gone through a period where we're how many years down the road? We're going on 6 years down the road. From the actual campaign season, we're coming up on 7 years, right? 7 years, it's actually after 7 years since I came to the United States after being out of the country for a while. And ever since I returned in 2015, this process has been going on. So normal relationships between people have been very questionable. I don't see them. I don't get to experience people with loving, meaningful relationships with each other. What I experience is this hyper abstraction, including what is reflected back to me by the media. And then there's the stuff that's going on subvertly. But the thing is, this subversive stuff that is going on is it's not isolated with me. I believe more than just me. There were more people impacted by what happened during the 2015 campaign season than me. I was not the only person, perhaps in California, because I believe the satellite network and the cable station that was working was based out of California and was doing operations in California, specifically Northern California. I do not believe I was the only person in the autumn of 2015 that had that experience. That I was watching that show, which was supposed to be a drama. And in the course of watching that show, it was like my body, actual parts of my body, were being technologically programmed for some sort of response. Different parts of my body were actually being excited and were actually being stimulated in a direct psycho-emotional response to what was going on with the show. And it didn't, in the course of the show, it made one sort of sense, but then when I was watching the debate, it made another one. And nobody's talked about this. Is that the Russian hacking? Did the Russians hack the satellite network during the Democratic debate of 2015 in Las Vegas? I contend that's not what it was. I don't think it was the Russians that did it. I think this is part of a more long-standing nefarious process that people have not been forthright about. There were other things that happened in the 2016 campaign season that were completely sexually inappropriate. As a matter of fact, I had to contact the Republican Party of Illinois about it. But nobody revealed what happened. And so when 2017 came along and we were supposed to be all mired in this Russian hacking crap and all of these things about Russian hacking and the Russian IRA, nobody had been honest about not only the hyper-sexualized exploitation, but also the manners in which it was incredibly racist. Incredibly racist within the United States and incredibly racist when it came to dealing with matters pertaining to immigrants and immigrants' rights, including immigrants' rights when it comes to participation in political process. See, some of us had already lived through that in 2008. Some of us had already lived through that in 2008, and we were supposed to be schooled. And we were supposed to understand where our baskets were to put our eggs in because they weren't supposed to be our eggs, right? And after that, by the time 2016 came along, I think some of us were already supposed to have been conditioned, right? And in the process now, how far along are we from there? So this is not isolated. That's why I say it's a political choice. It is a political choice. They need to know it is not acceptable for them to do that. And unfortunately, it does. It goes all the way up to the office of the president. It also, by the way, goes to the seat of every single senator and member of the House of Representatives that thought they were going to run for president and participate in debates like that, where they did things like that and they know what happened and they try to get what? Some case about how their third-party consultant for their campaign ripped them off? Really? About how you took out a loan for your election and you didn't get paid in the way you thought you should get paid back from that loan? It wasn't a loan, was it? No, it wasn't. That $72 million after the 2016 election was also not a loan, was it? No, it was not. And this is still going on. It happened in the campaign of 2018. It happened in the campaign of 2020. My understanding is they're trying to do it right now too, right? At some point, they're going to have to reveal what actually happened. Specifically, what happened prior to the debate in Las Vegas in 2015 for the Democratic Party. Did it just happen in California? Were there other states or other cities besides San Francisco in the United States where people were biohacked prior to the debate in order to excitate some sort of response out of them while they watched the debate? See, after I watched that debate, I didn't watch any more Democratic debates because I felt violated. I felt violated and I felt insulted. Did somebody think that it was a legitimate thing to do to biologically hack people so that they would have some sort of biophysiological response to watching the competition of a debate? Were we supposed to register our votes? Or were we supposed to demonstrate our loyalty based on pre-programmed cues to vote? You need to answer these questions.